organizing this event on the 50th anniversary of غسان's Kennefani martyrdom, and for inviting me to participate in speaking in his memory. This event is a proof that after 50 years, غسان is still alive, and today I see him in every face in this room. It is a proof that what did غسان wrote 54 years ago, 4 years before his assassination, that the body falls and the idea remains, and you are part of the idea. Let us start by saying that any educated person, and regardless of her or his nationality, who is honest with him or herself, reads and understands غسان Kennefani's revolutionary stance and doesn't become part of the struggle of the oppressed people, they should reconsider their moral values. And I believe that غسان didn't write because his hobby was writing, or because he aimed to publish what he wrote to entertain the reader. He was primarily a Palestinian fighter with a revolutionary political vision that he derived from his personal experience and from the lessons he learned from the experiences of other people's struggles. غسان read the reality and clearly defined the ways and means of change that reality for us. Without a doubt, غسان was exceptionally talented. He was murdered at the age of 36 and had accomplished more than most people. By the age of 24, غسان was the chief editor of most important Lebanese newspapers, which were distributed throughout the Arab world. And throughout his short life, he had written dozens of political and theoretical studies and more than 10 novels and short stories, the last of which was Khmsaan, which he wrote 3 years before his martyrdom. One of the most important studies غسان had written was his analysis of the 1936 and 1939 Palestinian Revolution, which was the first study to trace the reasons behind the failure of this revolution back to the class factor and the control of the bourgeoisie and the feudal leaders over it. This prompted him to be convinced of the correctness of a class analysis and to build his political vision based on this analysis. Accordingly, he contributed to writing the strategy of liberation, which clearly defined who were the revolution's enemies and who were its friends, and outlined the tactics of the relationship and alliance with the Arab regimes. He stressed the importance of the political parties, political movements like the PFLP, Fatah, the PFLP, and other organizations that link revolutionary theory with practice. You cannot be a revolutionary if you are not involved in a political party. غسان was a critical thinker. He did not accept everything that Karl Marx had written. He wrote a critical study of some of Marx's idea, especially regarding Marx's position on the issue of the inevitability of the communist society and the issue of nationalism and religion and discuss it if you want later. This critical study was written in 1969, which contained, which it is in his 5th volume. It was published 1915 in Arabic, 2015 in Arabic. It's not in English yet. And he wrote this article, 67 pages, after he visited China in 1966 and met the Chinese leaders, and then he left to India and met with Indira Gandhi and the Prime Minister of that time, Chester. Also, he studied the Algerian experiences and several other revolutions in the world. I think it's important and useful, and this is for PYM, it's a suggestion, for us to have a meeting or seminar to discuss that study. As for the novels that he had written, from my point of view as a reader, Ghassan's most important novel were Men in the Sun, Return to Haifa, which were turned into films you can watch, and of course, Inside. The 3 novels were not merely based on the writer's imagination, but rather the products of dialogue, observations, and direct evidence, which had an impact on Ghassan's writing style. Time does not permit me to speak of what I know about these narrations, but it is important to point out that Saad's novel was the result of his daily conversation with a Palestinian woman whom I know, who lived in the camp, Barajni camp, and was helping his family with housework. Ghassan says, I learned from Saad what I did not learn from all my education. And the most important lesson is not to give in to reality and to insist on getting up and moving toward the goal, regardless of the obstacles. A few people know that Ghassan Khanafani was the first to publish Naji al-Ali drawings of Handala in the newspapers. Naji was Abu Maher al-Yamani's student who introduced him to Ghassan. Coincidentally, both Naji and Ghassan were assassinated because they were constantly banging on the walls of the tank, warning of the Palestinian leadership's deviation from resistance and liberation. I consider myself fortunate to have personally known Ghassan Khanafani, and despite my young age, I had met him many times before his martyrdom, as he used to visit us because of his relationship with my father. Ghassan was the first to give me a book as a present. He gave me Men in the Sun and asked me to read it and write what I understood from the novel. It is not a secret that I was among some of the comrades who arrived at Ghassan's house 20 minutes after the assassination, where we found what remained of him, a head in a shoulder and a foot in a shoe. And I was among the thousands of people who attended his funeral in a scene that has never been witnessed in Beirut before. Before I end, I'll thank Jude Barakat who edited my speech. Thank you.